What's the most important bit of communicating? Listening. Who thinks that they are a good listener? Well, I would suggest that you are all brilliant listeners. The problem is that most of you, no, all of you, are listening to the wrong thing. Because what we never ever stop listening to is the voice in the head. So even when you're giving somebody your undivided attention, you're still listening to that. Your focus is split. There's a stereo thing going on. There's whatever they're saying. And there's the internal commentary that's going on and getting distracted. Who's tried to meditate? You know how difficult it is to stay focused on your breathing or the candle flame or nothing or whatever it is. Within seconds, your mind's gone off here and you've got to drag yourself back. Same thing happens when we're listening to somebody. The mind just goes off and you have to keep pulling yourself back. So when we talk about communication, just remember that listening is at the very, very heart of it. And we listen just as we look through filters of our own value system, our own concerns, our own whatevers. So there's always a big gap. There's a difference between what you meant to say and what you actually said. And then there's what people think that they heard, which isn't necessarily what you said at all, because their own internal commentary has got in the way and interpreted it. Then there's what they actually heard, which may or may not be what you said, because again, external things can get in the way. And then there's what they make it mean. Ever done that Chinese whispers thing? Do you remember as a kid, great long line, and you go around the room and you end up with something that is completely different from where it started. And you think, oh, well, that's because there were 20 people in the line and they were all giggling and whatever. No, that happens. That same thing happens whether it's just you and somebody else talking. So, different ways of listening. Listening to and listening for. Very, very different. When you're listening to somebody, you're doing it without assumptions. When you're listening for something, you're seeking and you'll hear it differently. Listening factually, that's a really good one for what's so. What can I learn from this? Empathically, that's trying to put yourself in their shoes. Generatively, trying to connect to something out in the future. But actually what we do all the time is listen through the filter to confirm what we already know, because that's comfortable. Listening without interrupting and allowing space for somebody. Have you had, I know you've never done it, have you been in those conversations where you know what somebody's leaping in when you're halfway through, let alone almost finished, with their response to what you're saying, and you're thinking, you're just not hearing me? So giving somebody space, that little pause when they've finished, where you nod and think about what they've said and allow it to land. It allows you to process what they've said, but even more importantly, it gives them the gift of knowing that they've been heard. There's a statistic that 40% of people go to see their doctor simply to be listened to, not because they've actually got something wrong with them. Matching and rapport building. We're going to talk about physically matching in a minute, but rapport is important because then you can give them what they need rather than what you want to give them. So summarising, reflecting back what they've said to really acknowledge and clarify that you understand what they've been saying to you rather than what you think it's all about. making sure that you've got it right. Trying to find out what their perception is, because it may be very, very different to yours. And noticing their self-talk and what it reveals. What clues people are giving away when they're talking to you. If somebody says, I'm going to try and give up smoking, are they giving up smoking? No. When people say they're going to try and do something, they actually have no intention of doing it. Really interesting, isn't it? As soon as that's in your language, it rules out success. Who's trying for a promotion this month? Don't you dare put your hands up. So notice what they're saying and what it reveals about them.